The most successful people in the world all have one thing in common. They've learned how to think big by developing a perspective of possibility. And the good news is, we all have the potential to apply the same strategies to achieve amazing things in our work and lives. Hi, I'm Rob Hartnett, and as your Chief Possibility Officer and host, I'm here to inspire you to become the star of your world as a person of possibility, through learning how people from all areas of life are thinking big and chasing down their dreams. We have some great sports people I talk to, and I'm going to talk to an entrepreneur, a sports person, a family guy, a totally awesome, amazing individual who's an Australian. His name is Tony Mowbray. He's just authored the book, Never Give In. He's sailed around the world non-stop, unassisted. It's one of his great stories, but he's joining me today. We're going to have a chat about a whole bunch of things. Tony, welcome to the show.
Mate, thanks very much. It sounds like someone else. It's not me.
Well, your book is very good, my friend. I really enjoyed it. And I think that you and I were just talking off air a second ago about how you wrote the book, not to be a sailing book, but to be more than that. And I got to say, as a sailor, an avid sailor, I really enjoyed the book, and there was lots of familiarity in there. But I got to tell you, what I actually really enjoyed was all the parts, all the non-sailing parts too. And I really enjoyed those parts about just the struggle on finances, sponsorship, the marketing, bringing up a family. I think you did a really good job in getting us behind the scenes of what it's like through your career as well. And in fact, when it finished, I actually wish it had kept going. So I was really keen. That's why I've got a couple of questions in there. Go, what happened next? What did you do?
Yeah.
So you're a great writer, Tony. So well done.
Oh, I appreciate it very much. It ended up 380 pages. The original manuscript was 165,000 words, and I had no understanding as to the size of a manuscript. I've pared it back to 122,000, and even then it's 380 pages. So, but yeah, and I could have kept going, but look, people usually see you, when you with the finished product, crossing the finish line with your raised arms in the air or whatever it might be. What they don't see is all the graft and the effort and the hard work behind the scenes quite often. And so I've tried to, lay that out for people to understand that it isn't all beer and Skittles.
Yeah, no, you definitely did a great job. But let's talk about that. So, the first question I've got for you is a personal one.
Sure.
Now, you said one of your first cars you had was a panel van. Do you want to tell us what sort of panel van you had?
Well, when I was 17, when I was a kid, there was a fellow that lived a few streets away from us, and he had a small bakery in his backyard. And he used to bake pies and sausage rolls and pasties. And I used to go to the football as a kid, and he had this old yellow Holden panel van, which I think was about a 1960 model. And I would go over to the football as a kid, and I'd buy a pie or a sausage roll out the back of his van. Well, lo and behold, when I'm 17, he shut his little bakery down, and I bought his van for $375, and it was. And every time I got in it still smelled like a pie.
It smelled like a pie, wouldn't it? I reckon I actually came across one of those fully rebuilt, decked out. And it's being used over a hotel on the Gold Coast. It was actually their signature, and they had a couple of surfboards on it and the like. I originally asked, I've got a Sandman tribute panel band, so we're all a bit eclectic in that.
I was in Coffs Harbour a couple of weeks ago, and they've got a Holden museum up there, and I saw a Sandman van there.
Oh yeah,
made me grin a bit.
I've got to tell you, of all the cars I've owned a lot of cars over the years, this car gets more responses and looks, and people come up to you in service stations, and just it brings back so many memories. It brings back so many, and people always are smiling. They look at it and they always smile. They come back, oh man, this reminds me of blah, blah, blah. And it's always a story.
A bit like my Around the World boat, Solo Boat Challenger. She was a Cole 43 with beautiful lines. And if any of the sailors may know a Cole, they'll know what I'm talking about. But every time you'd pull into a wharf or a dock or somewhere, people would come up, what sort of boat's that, mate?
Yeah.
They've just held their beauty for 50 years.
They have. It's funny about that because there's one down in the Gippsland Lakes. It's actually moored in the straits between Raymond Island and Paynesville, and it's a Colt 43. And my wife said, oh, gee, that's a lovely looking boat. It's a really nice IOR lines. I said, that's Colt 43. And then she was saying, oh, what did Tony sail on around the world? I said, the boat down? She goes, oh my God, it's such a good looking boat. Yeah. And they totally are. Hey, so tell me about sailing though, because how did you get into it? Because your family weren't sailors. How did you get kind of introduced into the sport or recreation of sailing?
Yeah, I was. Look, I grew up in Belmont, which is right on the shores of Lake Macquarie here, just south of Newcastle. Beautiful part of the world, and I guess a great area for the growth of budding sailors that go on to bigger things. I used to ride my push bike past the lake going to school every day or catch the bus. And you can't help but have some relationship with the water if you live near Lake Macquarie. At 11 years of age, my mathematics at school was suffering. I was only in late primary school, but my mum used to babysit a couple of young babies for a fellow called Bob Snape. She sent me to after-hours mathematics tuition, and I remember the very first time sitting at his dining room table, and he had a long skinny thing in the corner of his room. And my question was, this is actually the first chapter of the book is called this.
Yes.
What's that, Mr. Snape?
Yeah.
And Bob was a pretty considered sort of a person. He goes, oh, that's a spinnaker pile off my yacht that I have to repair. My 11-year-old ears pricked up and said, oh, you've got a yacht, have you? You know, the very next Sunday at his invitation, I rode my push bike down to the Lake Macquarie Yacht Club. Still remember propping it up against the wall, walked around the corner of the club to look at his yacht, which is a little 26-foot swallow class, similar to an Etchell or a Soling, and except it's a timber plank boat. And I remember thinking, it's not quite as big as what I thought it was going to be.
Right.
And that started it. And
yeah,
I was just hooked virtually from the first minute. I sailed in VJs, the smaller boats.
Yes, dinghies and things.
But 11, it's like, now I'm in there. This is having a crack.
But tell me about that. What was it that you really liked about it? Because some people try and not like it, and some people, for all sorts of reasons. Was it the thrill of the racing, or was it getting on a boat and the being a bit of freedom? What sort of occurred to you at the time?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of things. I think it was, as an 11-year-old, you're starting to blossom and getting close to being a teenager. You're starting to find your own way in the world. And I've always been a very determined person to go out and do stuff, whatever stuff is. And I found I ran into this whole bank of people that I didn't know existed, because we were coal miners. My family were all coal miners. So this bank of people that were business people that, and sailing, of course, is a great level. You can be sitting next to a brain surgeon and a garbage collector.
Yes.
Yeah. And we're all having fun at the same time.
Yeah.
I found this incredible group of people that Snapey introduced me to, that I started sailing with. I loved the feel of the water. I could be a bit autistic or something, because I just love that emotion and the feeling. I love the freedom. I love this newfound thing of being able to point your bow where you want to go and go there, that type of thing, as a parallel for life. So there's a whole lot of things. Getting out of the classroom.
Yeah, interesting. And look, as I read your book too, and having sailed for a long time, like you have, I came across different boats, and the one boat jumped out at me was a boat called Fiona. It was a FAR 42, and that was originally, you sailed on that, but that was originally Jock Starrick's boat, the great America's Cup sailor and one design sailor from Melbourne. It was the same boat, I think. Is that right?
Right. Yeah, great. Good mate of mine, Doug Coulter, who's passed away just a couple of years ago now. Doug bought that boat in the early 80s from Jock. And walked to the lake here. She was red, white, and blue, if you remember.
That's it. Yeah, stripes. Yeah.
42-footer. And she had a big fat bum on her. So when it was light, she used to stick and you couldn't get it to go, which was a bit of Achilles heel to her. But no, we did the 83 and 85 Hobarts in her. We were going to do 84, which was a bad year, but we did the Montague Island race in her in 84 as a lead-up race to the Hobart. And we got hammered and ended up getting rescued and did some damage to the boat. So poor old Dougie's checkbook said, I think I'll go have a rest. So we did that.
Yeah, he was really great. I remember he presented me with a trophy I won down in Sorrento, which I brought the boat down for a regatta, and it was a huge highlight. And I got to meet him the next day. He was doing another race at Blackberry, and we chatted, and he was such a gentleman, and even I must have been maybe 14 or something, and all the time in the world. Like, he's one of these guys that, when they spend time with you, it doesn't care who you are, that's right. Their attention's on you, and I could ask him anything about sailing. Yeah, lovely guy.
That's exactly right. I remember meeting Jock at that time, and so I was impressed by as you were. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Now, you did one of the big events you did when you sailed around Australia two-handed. What was the attraction, of sailing around? I mean, some people had already done it, but I remember you got into it and decided, I reckon I can do it. I think you were originally going to try and charter a boat or rent a boat, but you ended up buying in the end.
Yeah, originally, what happened was that we'd been up doing Hamilton Island Race Week on Doug's more recent boat, which was 45-footer called Ozfire, and I was bringing the boat back to Lake Macquarie, and I knew that Doug was going to put the boat on the market, so I knew that next chapter was going to come to a close, and I was sailing past Mooloolaba. It was night time. I remember looking at the lights, thinking about stuff, and I remember John Gleeson. I don't know if you've ever heard of John. John was a pharmacist, and has a son called Billy Gleeson. And I remember reading in a sailing article back in the mid-70s about how they had sailed around Australia non-stop in a Duncan 35.
Mhm.
And that sort of got me thinking. And one thing led to another. I came home and I tracked him down and I rang him. I remember him telling me that he was working in his what should have been his retirement. He thought we had an ass about face. You should retire while you're young and then work to pay for it later. That's not a bad idea.
Good concept.
Yeah, so I spoke with him about the Around Australia trip that they had done, and he confided in me that there were 4 on board. And he said, look, people think we didn't stop, but we did stop here and there to anchor and things like that. Anyhow, I got carried away. So 11 months. Yeah, 11 months after barging through the door at home, we had 2 young my wife, we had a young daughter, one on the way, no money, no boat. I got a sponsor to partially pay for it. I ended up buying a boat, which was a Coal 43 called Polaris, which the sailing listeners would many of them remember fondly. She's a beautiful boat. And I had done the 75 Hobart on her, believe it or not, as a 20-year-old. So I bought her, never thinking that I'd ever own it. And I owned a little bit of it, about $500 under rent.
Yeah, the pulpit.
Yeah. And so my mate and I, Maury Morgan, we sailed out of Newcastle Harbour in March of 1994. We turned left. We kept turning left, including the bottom of Tasmania. And 54 days later, we sailed back in, having completed a non-stop circumnavigation of our beautiful country.
I think you did that it was a better time than what you thought too. Was that right?
Oh, it was 54 days. I think it was 6,250 nautical miles or something. I mean, we just averaged 5 knots. I just plod along. Like we did some quick days and some slower days, but 5 knots average is all right. That gets you there.
Now I like the way you say that. For the listeners here, I like the way you said that. Yeah, it was only like 54 days, 6,500 nautical miles on a 43-foot boat. I mean, some people don't go 30 kilometres from Sorrento to Brighton, Tony. So,
yeah, I know.
On much bigger boats.
How do you know you're mad when you're mad? That's it. It's crazy, isn't it?
And obviously that got you into thinking, that was good. And you ended up selling that boat?
Yeah, we got back in May of '94, and then through one meet, I was approached by my sponsor for that trip. He didn't pay for everything, but they helped.
Right.
And Ian came to me and suggested that we might do the 50th Hobart in '94. I said, mate, I've got no money. I'm broke again. But I've since had another child, So he hit the tin for some more money. We did the 50th Hobart, and I loved that boat. She was just a beautiful boat. But the reality of having young family, and I'd stretched the rubber band financially pretty tautly, and I was and also emotionally, being away from the kids. So I sold the boat to John Quinn. Many of the sailing listeners would remember he's the guy that went over the side in the 93 Hobart on his J35 Mem. So John bought the boat from me and then went on and did some beautiful things with her. He took delivery of her in January 95.
Right. And then we lead it up to the 98 Hobart, the infamous 98 Hobart, which was, I've read a reasonable amount about it, seen videos and things. And in fact, I even sat through the presentation of one of the chopper rescue guys.
That would be Peter Davison.
Yeah, it's Peter Davison. But your writing of it was transformational. It was very different. I'm
about to cry.
Well, it was incredible, Tony. I mean, the way you took us into it, and look, I did the 84 as I mentioned to you, and that had big waves. But to me, that was still nothing to what you went through during that. And I remember there was a couple of things I wanted to ask you about the 98 Hobart, and there was huge winds, huge waves. I mean, we're talking enormous waves and winds. And you guys ended up going to bare poles and doing everything in your seamanship. You had a great crew, obviously, on board the boat. Was there anything that you had done differently? Because I know you went around the world. You obviously had that in your mind. But in that 98 Hobart, would there been everything done differently? Would you have gone more inshore than outshore? Would you have kept a storm? I'm just trying to get, as you reflect on things, it's always easy in hindsight, but I'm just keen to ask you the question.
Well, and that was a very, that is an excellent question. Look, I don't think there's a lot that I would do differently. Although, as you were asking that question, I'm thinking to myself, because we went to bare poles at midday on the Sunday, and because of people ask me, what do you do in a storm? Well, no storm is the same as another storm. No set of sea conditions are the same as another set. So you have to make your decisions based on what you're dealing with at the time. Because of a number of reasons, we were able to hold a reasonable sort of course heading towards Tassie, even though we're under bare pole. Sounds a bit crazy, but we could. The only thing maybe I might have tried was pulling away and running with it prior to that, and maybe running a drogue.
Right.
And
Yeah, interesting.
And I've got to say, Rob, I've never, ever, 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 ever considered that question, and that's my answer to that. So that's
Yeah.
that I could think about, but as it is, it's like life. It turned out like it turned out, and so be it. There are a lot of other people got in a lot of trouble too, you know.
Absolutely. And I think there was a couple of things in there from people who are non-sales, but there was some, one of the things I like about your book is there's so much leadership in there. I mean, I know you bring this up when you're speaking around leadership and teamwork as well, but I think there was so much in there. I think one of the points you made there was while there was a consensus discussion amongst the crew, you had to make the call, do we go to bear poles? You made the call as a leader. And I think as a leader, you have to lead. And that's the whole reason you're there. You can't just have an opinion and with everybody else. And I thought you were very I thought it was really well put the way you said that. We talked, we discussed it with great people in the boat, and I decided we're doing this, or I decided we had to lead with that, and the team supported it.
Your destiny's in the palm of your hand. It's up to you. Like one of the analogies I use, or the example I use, is that if you're a member of a team and you go to the supposed leader of the team and you have this great idea that you think is 100% foolproof, it's going to improve productivity or efficiency or whatever the heck it is, and you lay all this out and the leader sits there and goes, oh, yeah, I'll think about that. And you go back in a week or two's time and they're still thinking about it, and you go back a third time, and, the analogy I use is they're knitting a cardigan. Do you want one pocket or two in your cardigan?
Yes.
Just make a bloody decision. It's never going to be 100% correct all of the time, but make a decision. Move forward, and if the decision proves to be not quite right, then modify your actions as you go. But make a decision. Don't practice.
Yeah.
And team members just lose respect so quickly for a leader that won't make a decision.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I thought that was really good the way you did that. And I mean that the whole way you wrote that, I won't spoil it for listeners because it's fantastic the way you take us through, and also the whole lot of it. I mean, there was so much involved in losing the rig and going upside down. I remember a good friend of mine who's passed away. Now he was in the 98. They were on B-52, and that rolled 360, and they were stuck like the keel was up. And he said to me, and he's a pretty gung ho guy. He's unfortunately passed away now, but he said to me, without doubt, that was the most frightening kind of emotional time he'd ever been, when they were just literally standing on the cabin floor, not knowing where the world was going to turn up. And you can only imagine. I can't. You can't. You were there.
Look, it just emotionally took me to the edge. Like I was on the way I described it, I was on the edge of the precipice, looking down into the chasm. And you may recall that I was talking there about because I really just love my children so much. I'm now 30, nearly 34 and 32. But when you think about the possibility that the boat might, first of all you think, oh, geez, I think I'm going to drown. So drowning, it's not cancer or nursing home or whatever. Next thought process is, well, the boat goes down and me and my 7 mates are all in the water together. What happens then? What do I think about? And then when your mates are gone, there's just you and the whole thought process. And then you think to yourself, when there's just me and I'm about to drift away, I hope my very last thoughts will be of my children. And the kicker is, which I detail in the book once again, if I think of my children last, which one?
Yeah, that was crazy. I was like, you said that. That's why I say the book is so compelling. That was incredible. And the other thing was I love the rescue. That was a classic scene when you thought the patrol boat was coming, and the guys are working downstairs on the diesel, couldn't get the diesel to go, and you go. I can't remember the crew member who do it, saying, "No freaking way! I'm not getting this diesel going."
This thing going.
That was up, and you're like, "No, we're okay, boys." So classic.
That was good. I had a warship, the warship Newcastle, lumbering over the horizon. I had an Orion search aircraft doing loops around us, and I had the ABC chopper piloted by Gary Ticehurst, who's now 6 miles away, above us. And I thought, I've got an ABC chopper, a warship, and an Orion. If I'm not saved now, I never will be,
That's right, yeah. You can't possibly miss it. One of the things you talk about in a lot of the endeavours you've done, but you have this philosophy, I'm just going to read it out because I want to get it right, which was, and it's the name of a chapter, which is Dream, Think, Talk, Commit and Act, right? So dream, think, talk, act, commit and act. Tell us about that philosophy and then how you came about that.
Well, and this sounds really crazy how long it is, but 25 years or more ago, if I read, without me realising it, but if I read one of those words in a newspaper article or a book, or if you spoke on a conversation, independently of the other four, it would have a certain strength and meaning. Some words are more powerful than others, as we know. But as a result of some of the crazy things that have happened in my life, I've strung these. See, the only thing that's unique to Tony Mowbray is the order in which I've put these 5 words.
Yes.
That's all I got, right?
Yeah.
The rest of the stuff I've read or learned from other people or whatever. So, and when I look at these 5 words as one entity, to me, they just dovetail in like a piece of finely, detailed joinery, or they blend in like a hand in a glove. And I look at the 5 words as one entity, they take on a whole new powerful meaning. And I then look at this and I think, well, these 5 words, and people, nod their head and agree, they apply to so many aspects of our lives. It could be having children, rising up through the ranks of business, trying to lose weight, get your golf handicap down, whatever it might be. And the first word is to dream, and that's where it all starts. And sometimes it stays a dream, doesn't move on. Sometimes, although, subconsciously or consciously, you take it to the next realm where you start to actually think about it. Because the dream might be your own private dream, and that you take it to your grave. The thinking bit, that can go on for ages. And then one day you might be game enough to open your mouth to the 1 or 2 people whose opinion that you're really going to value. And I say, it could be your mum or your dad, your brother, your sister, a peer, whatever. And you say, listen, sit down. And everyone's done this. Whenever I relate this, they all nod their head, just as you're now. And they go, look, I need to talk to you about something. So you might talk about it. And then the example I use is me, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. You've got that black void of the ceiling that you're staring at. We've all been there, and you're laying there wide awake, and it's going round and around your head, what you've been dreaming and thinking about and talking about. And you realise that you've been talking about this thing for so long that you're starting to bore yourself. They're not around you. And everyone laughs just like you do. You go, yeah. At that point, we all know that what you've got to do is you're either going to shut up and stop talking about it or do it. And the 4th word is commit. Yeah. And the 5th word is act, because the old adage of your ideas won't work unless you're true to this day. So, and the commitment phase of it is when I commit, Rob, I'm in. Yeah. When you contact me and I tell you that I'll do this podcast, I'm in. There's no, none.
I've got a beautiful video which you'd like. There's a couple of things you mentioned in here which just recently Tom Cruise talked about on the red carpet.
A lot of people confuse me with Tom Cruise and
they do. Well, that was just the looks, clearly. But there was one bit that Tom Cruise, I said to Tom Cruise about some of the stunts he does. It was like, how do you do it? You're mad, whatever. And he said, the most important thing I've got to do is talk. Firstly, so I've got to get out of my own head. He said, if I stay in my own head, it's never going to go anywhere, and I'll talk myself out of it. So as soon as I come up with the idea, I think about it. It's amazing, your acronym. And he says, then I reach out to people and I go, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Have you ever done it or you did it? I'm just thinking about a different angle. And he said, if I start talking to people, I'm outside of myself. I've now got more heads working on it. And that was the first one. And he really talks about that quite eloquently. And the second one was an interview we did on the project recently where he talked about once I commit, I'm 100%. I'm 100% in. And it just, the wording's exactly that. But it's interesting about the first bit, talking to other people about it, kind of gets it, starts to go on that journey.
The commitment phase, 100%. Time, and people listening now will know that, when you are 100% committed to something, and I don't care what it is, it could be being the best marbles player at school or, making $1 million or raising beautiful children, whatever the hell it is. Forget about business for a minute. It is amazing what people will do to help you if you're 100% boots and all. If you're only 90%, they won't. And the analogy I use is that if you're in at the deep end of the pool, there's a chance people will jump in with you. But if you're not in there first, people won't go first. So 100% commitment, and you can't hide it. When you're boots and all, people just know, don't they?
Well, it's all right. It's that passion. But I have to ask you a question, though, and I'm like you. I get on and do things, or like to think I do. You obviously do. Why do you think people don't do that that commit and act? Well, so many people do the dream, the think, the talk, but they don't actually act. What in your experience, what do you think holds people back?
People are scared of failure, or not achieving. There are a lot of people that have the ability to go within 90 or 91 or 92% of the overall possible success of what it is they're set to do, but it's that band of people that can go to 100%, and that takes. It's like sailing a boat. It's relatively easy to get a boat to within 90% of its performance, but to get that last 10%, you're pushing water, you're on edge, the boat's on edge, you maybe start to break stuff, and that's when you're starting getting into a different realm. I think people are like that as well. It's really hard to get that last 10% of effort, but if you do bust through the barrier, the rewards. Forget about money, but the rewards can be crazy stuff.
Well, and I think the other thing I talk to people a lot about is that action precedes passion. right? You can't be passionate about something that you haven't done,
Correct.
right?
Yeah,
and like you went as an 11-year-old, I went sailing, right? And then because you acted and got on a boat, you went, hang on, I really like this. And that's passion. So to me, it's always action precedes the passion, because you don't know. How do you know? Well, you can't say, I'm really passionate about it. I haven't done it yet, but I'm really passionate about it. It's bullshit, basically.
One of the things I've learned over the years is that, by accepting your goals or challenges or that you've set for yourself or that someone else has set for you, whatever the hell it is, and you've pushed and you've shoved and you've ground and you finally you bust through. And the example I use is, when I'm in the Atlantic Ocean sailing around the world and it's beautiful southeast trade winds and it's glorious, sports and T-shirt, whales, dolphins, rainbows, and at night you're laying there and you're looking up this jet black velvet sky and there's stars look like diamonds going to drip out of the sky all over you, all this stuff. That's what I call your personal reward. That's for having taken the action, and that's a bit like the passion, So that's your own personal reward for having committed and acted.
And got on with it.
But you've got to act to get it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. I think there's another interesting philosophy I came across recently, and I actually reckon this is true. They said that if you try to get people to change, it's when fear of missing out is greater than fear of failure.
Yeah.
Right? So the fear of missing out is greater than the fear of failure. And I've done that a few times myself, where I've known what to do, knowing I should do it, haven't quite done it. But when I've actually realized what I'm about to miss out on, all of a sudden I've got this extra 10%.
We think we're different, but we're all the same.
Very, very much so. A couple of things. So let's talk about you sailed solo unassisted around the world in Solo Globe Challenger. Which was an amazing thing. And I loved all the build up to it. I loved the frustration with marketing people. That was something that kind of really resonated in my background. It drove me nuts. And the people, you were clearly, we're all been there again with that. But you had some great people. You had some great people as well who also supported you. Now, I've got one question I'm going to ask you. This I didn't put this in the script, but I was thinking about you the other day. And I thought, hang on, Tony had this obsession on so many boats, and definitely on during this whole around the world, was how long his underwear could last for. And I have to say, did you ever approach Bonds for a sponsorship?
No, I didn't. The backstory to that, of course, is that in the Around Australia trip, for listeners' benefit, I wore the same pair of underpants for 27 days continuously. Many people, of course, were disgusted with me.
It's a family show, Tony.
As was my crewmate, Maury Morgan. But I thought I wear it as a badge of honour. Around the world trip, I thought that I might try and take it out to a new PB, so to speak, maybe 3 days. But, of course, I wore them much longer than that. I've still got them. They're actually here beside me, sitting on the floor.
Great.
But, I didn't, and I probably should have.
I just thought about that would have been the greatest longevity. Maybe they wouldn't have done it because they lasted too long and they want people to buy more. But anyway, I thought about it. Hey, so you did all this preparation. You got sponsorship going. You were sorted out. You got a great launch. You had all the people there. It was a fantastic send-off. And I think it's like on this first or second night you've gone, geez, I'm really happy I put those, I made up those second set of rudder cables just in case my rudder cables break. And then you realise I did make them up, but I left them in my garage. I thought, I went through, I went, oh my God, how many times have we all done that? And I thought to myself, again, it's a retrospective question. Would you have done it? What can we do differently that we make sure that stuff that's really important, that we actually went and made them and we thought about it and then we just left them behind? I mean, what goes through our heads? Well, is it just overwhelm?
It's a hard question. Like with the steering cables, the spare set of cables were such in my opinion, an integral part to success. In the end, I need them, but only just. The original set got through. Look, how I'm big on weakest links. I'm big on looking around and finding a weakest link and working on that so it's no longer your weakest link, but the trouble is it's a work in progress. Now there's something else that's the weak link, so you got to find that.
Yeah.
So I'm big on minimising risk. I really work hard at minimising the risk. But the trouble is people become risk-centric, don't they? They just focus on the risk. I remember I did a talk once at a conference up in far north Queensland, and the talk was from a compliance officer, and she gave out a coffee mug as a memento of her presentation, and inscribed on the coffee mug was "Comply or Die." What a great phrase that is, So anyhow, look, all you've got to do is work as hard as you can, make lists, tick off the lists, job list going. But at the end of the day, there's always going to be that old phrase of stuff happens,
Yeah, you just miss it. And that leads me on to the amazing thing you did, and what was amazing at the time was when I think you were like one of those points in the round the world trip where you were so far from land, you were at the furthest place you could possibly be away from land or rescue.
Point Nemo.
Yeah, Point Nemo, that's right. And you discovered that the shrouds holding port shrouds are actually, there's a chain plate given way. You discovered that by accident. You're sort of wandering up and you put your hand in a puddle of water and hang on, that really shouldn't be there. And what's going on? All of a sudden, it's really poor. Take us through that, because it was about a 7-day repair, if I remember correctly, on isolating it, finding it out, and sorting it out. Take me through the 7 days on how that went. You found and fixed it.
It was on day 35 of the Around the World trip, and as you say, I was at Point Nemo, which is the furthest point you can be from land on this earth. And I was deep in the Southern Ocean, and this stainless steel fitting that bolts into the boat, that the wires connected to hold the mast up in simplistic terms, it partially failed and opened up like a jam tin lid and was about to blow the deck off, and the rig was about to come tumbling down. And of course, that's the end of that. Plus, I'm that far from land.
Yes.
So my immediate reaction was, I'm going to lose the mast. Then I thought, okay, let's try and stabilise it. And then I think I've stabilised it initially. Let's try and stabilise a bit more. So it was an evolutionary task. And then I thought, no, I think I may have stabilised it enough. I'm going to have to go into Chile to get help to get it welded up and whatever, which would negate the attempt. I'd be done. But then I thought, hang on a minute. No, I think I can actually, because I've got a detour a long way to go to Chile, maybe I can actually get it strong enough to actually sail around Cape Horn, but now go to the Falkland Islands.
Right.
Hang on a minute. If I can get around the Horn with this thing, maybe, just maybe, I can keep working on it and improve it to the point where it's stable enough to carry on with the task at hand. So over a 7-day period, it was evolutionary. So how you start out is not how you end up.
Yes.
It's going to be at the start isn't how it always ends up. Most likely it's not going to be. So it's very, very interesting. And eventually I got it to the point that I got it, it was a lot of work. I mean, I cannibalised the boat. I drilled a lot of things on. I cut chain off the anchor chain to support it. I put purchase systems on. It was just trussed up like 3 broken arms and two bad legs. But I was able to sail everything. I was able to keep going. The interesting thing at the end of that, now in those days I was able to communicate with the outside world via satellite, and I was doing email updates. Early in that stage, I sent an email update out that's something to the effect of, it's nearly all over, the fat lady's in the wings, about ready to gargle, the last act,
Right.
Now, towards the end of that, once I'd all fixed it, there were a number of emails that I received, and you can categorise them into 2. The first one is represented by an email that essentially said something like, oh, look, it's okay, Tony. It's a piece of stainless steel that failed. You didn't fail. You did a good job. You can come in now.
Right.
Really? Interesting how people view things, So
well, I think
people reactions are different, I guess, as a leader. And
yes.
Going back to that 9 out Hobart when you touched on the leadership aspect, one of the things that I realised, because we had men with some quite serious injuries, not all, a number were, one of the things that I recognised in that setting was that because people like to do what it is they feel they can do well.
Yeah.
So in that setting with these injuries, they had to revisit their abilities at that point in time, given their injuries, but they all gravitated independently of each other to do things that they thought that they could do well in order to make a group effort to try and keep that boat afloat to sustain life on board. Now, as a leader, I observed this and I thought, geez, Biggles is doing this and whatever. So as a leader, I saw my role as to keep them motivated to keep doing that and urge them to keep doing that thing well. And together we might just survive. So I guess everyone's got a hot button.
Yeah.
As a leader, I believe your job is to find that hot button, press it and keep it pressed.
I mean, I think, look, that's so well said. I think as a leader, one thing I say as a leader, your job is to develop your people, or find that hot button, find what they do well. And that's a revolution to a lot of people, by the way, Tony.
Oh, it is.
For many leaders who think it's about developing them. So to find that is a really good thing, and then keep them motivated and keep them all going, so the whole team lifts as a group.
When I rounded Cape Horn, I'd been at sea for 50 days at that point. All I was just a jockey. On board me on that boat were all the people in spirit that have helped me in so many ways over so many years, put up with me, gave me money, gave me goods and services. So I'm just one member of a massive team. And leaders should not lose sight of that.
No, I agree. Now, I think I noticed in one of the photos, though, did you, after you fixed the port shroud, did you actually then do the same thing on the starboard side? just to either prevent it, or did the starboard side start to go as well? Because I looked at that.
Yeah. No, what happened was the port side failed in the Southern Ocean. I managed to jury rig all of that and got going after 7 days, rounded the Horn. But then up into the Atlantic Ocean, I was mortified to see that the starboard side shroud, 2 of those had what they call stranded. So the wire rigging is 1x19, it's 9 spans, and I had some rigging failure on that side, but not in the actual structural aspect of the boat, but on the rigging wires. So I had to jury rig those as well. So yeah, she was certainly trussed up in the end, and we eventually got to the finish line.
Fantastic. It was a great job. I think the other part I really liked as well is when you were, you organised a great entry. Everyone come in daylight and for your sponsors and for everybody else. And I say you did a great job for your sponsors. And so you were just sort of moseying around off the coast, and a couple of your mates went out and came out in the rib to see you. And your whole conversation was, at the end of every sentence, you went over. Which is not surprising, but it must have been hilarious at the time.
Well, I didn't see, in the 180 days I was out, 181 days I was out there, I saw land for a total of 3, which is, people go, what the hell?
Incredible.
3 days in total. The other 178 was ocean. I didn't see a human being from the day left to the day I got back. And the big thing is, I laugh about it, but then it had to be a bloke, and a really ugly one. Anyhow, I arrived off the entrance south of Newcastle Harbour off Blacksmith's Beach on the day before, about 2:30 in the afternoon. And a couple of my mates were beach inspectors, and they were laying around on the beach doing nothing as they normally do. They looked out and they saw me, and I was just stooging around, washing off time till the next day. One said, I think that's Moe out there. So they launched the rib, came out, and I'm down below. And next to me here, hey, Moe, are you there? And I come up, here's Jeff Mowbray, and he's a distant relation, and Tony Steers. So we're having this conversation. I'm warning them, he can't come and touch the boat, blah, blah. But yeah, no, every they still to this day, or laugh about at the end of each sentence, I'd say over.
Yeah, that's classic.
Yeah, I know.
So you had great celebration. You got back, and it was huge. I mean, the amount of people who turned out was unbelievable, and the photographs are fantastic, and it's just it was so inspirational for people
there.
I know, it's amazing, isn't it?
Well, that's part of the. When I left, there was probably 500, and when I set this task for myself, it wasn't for those reasons. It was my inner spirit to prove to myself that I could do it. Mm. So if there were only 5 people there when I got back, that would have been okay. But what happened was, over the 6 months, through our website updates and through various media releases and things like that, people became at one with they wanted to be involved. They knew I was so committed, and they wanted to be part of this team that was having a go. And so, 30,000 people was beyond my wildest expectations. And still to this day, 24 years and a bit later, people come up to me and go, I was there that day.
And this is all before social media too, Tony.
Oh,
that was an amazing effort. I think it was a lot of credit to you for doing those calls to the local radio stations and those teams getting behind you. But this is all pre-social media. You created a huge buzz.
It could have been 100,000 there if you had social media.
You would have been the first sailor influencer, I reckon, at that particular point.
Had so many. I had every time I run into someone that was there that tells me that, I really thank them profusely, because it just I feel emotional speaking about it now. It just makes such an incredible contribution to my life and my kids' lives, for my kids. They're like, wow, what a great thing,
Yeah, the other thing I liked about the way you tell it in the book is you talk about the reality of it, of also the challenges that are going on, but also just the immense boredom sometimes of just sailing the ocean for ages and then downstairs and reading the book and on self-steering's on. And you sort of talk about that, and having read, seeing what Jess Watson's done and others as well. I really brought it to life, like what it's like, day after day, and then the challenges of, and also the interesting thing for me was, the shipping side, like how many boats you came across or ships are just completely unmanned. Like you tried to call them on radios, and you just go. It was incredible, wasn't it?
I'm still, just writing that. And the last 2 years, I really put a massive effort into getting the book finished. And going back into that time and thinking about that time in my life, it still frustrates and angers me that they just virtually have complete disregard. In the Atlantic, it was just shocking. 90% of ships, when called, wouldn't answer.
Real.
And I call them agents of stealth. They're just moving through the ocean, like almost hunting and seeking their prey. And if you're down below asleep, they just run you down. They wouldn't even know they'd done it,
No, they wouldn't even know.
really
Um,
quite disconcerting.
Tell me, when you got back, what was the biggest challenge? So you're back into real life, if you will. You're back with the family, and it'll be great. The boat's there. What was the biggest challenge for you after the 6 months getting back into regular life?
Well, a lot of people would think that you'd curl up in the fetal position in the corner, but that's not me. As the listeners might have gathered by now, I'm a bit extroverted and I like to have a crack. I had spent 4 years on a asset reduction program, and it worked magnificently. So I had 2 young children and a family, and I had to go to work and earn some money to start to square away the ledger. I didn't really have too many significant challenges, but probably the one thing that springs to mind is that as you jump ashore and you get back into daily life, someone gives you a mobile phone and you're back in business, sort of thing. And it's still to this day, is that because what happens is you develop this mindset where anything's possible. You can do it.
Yeah.
So you have to be very careful when you're dealing with people that doesn't come out as being arrogant or I know it all or whatever.
Right.
I really had to, particularly in those earlier days, really try and put a little bit of lid on my exuberance and deliver it in a certain way that it's, we can do this together or whatever. I remember sitting there, we made a documentary, and I remember sitting there, Bilo, which were owned by Coles, which were a low, no food supermarket. I had a food sponsorship with them. We made a documentary, and I went to them and I had a meeting with them. And I said, look, we've made this documentary. It's going to be advertised 100 times on NBN television. You're going to get your logo, which was really bold and dominant. You're going to get your logo on there 100 times. And what I propose to do is people can go to your local area supermarkets, buy a copy of the documentary, and all of the profit will go to charity. It's not going to cost you a thing, and you're going to be the good corporate citizen, blah, blah, blah. We're sitting at this meeting, and the guy said to me, so when does the documentary come out? I said, it'll be ready for release in 6 weeks, say, And he looked at me, he said, no, we wouldn't be able to do that. I said, why is that? Oh, no, he said, it takes us at least 12 weeks to get a product on the shelf.
Right.
Just sat there in amazement. And I remember saying to him, mate, if I can sail around the world solo, non-stop and unassisted, you can get a product on your shelves in 6 weeks. Now what are you going to talk about?
Right.
And of course, for many people, that would be arrogance.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, I get the point, though. I think it's a really good one for the. It's an interesting point you make. I had one of my podcasts earlier with a guy called Lockie Henderson, who was an AFL player, and he's been coached by some of the best. And I actually asked him a question because I've noticed this. I said, why do you think it is that high performers like you, elite sportsmen in AFL or Olympians, just struggle in the corporate life? They all think they're going to go to corporate life, right? And I see a lot of them go, and they just don't last. And he said, well, bottom line is you kind of been you're operating at such a high level that the pursuit of mediocrity is you just don't understand it. You just can't connect with it. And he said, if you're an AFL player, you've got a shit ton of money anyway, so you just leave.
I've never had a shit ton of money, and I still don't, but I'm going okay.
Yeah.
But I've had to do that for myself.
But the frustration's there, though. When the money's on the AFL, but he said you've been operating, and Olympians don't have a lot of money, right? But they've been operating at such a high level, and whether in a team. And he said to me, like, I'm in a team, I'm playing in a team, and he's talking about Chris Scott at Geelong. He said, Scotty tells me to do this and I don't get it right. I feel really bad. Like, Scotty just told me, I know I should have done, I didn't get it right. I want to get it right again. So I'm letting my team down. And he said, when you go to other organizations, he said, a lot of companies just doesn't operate like that.
Yeah. Yeah, look, there's a lot of people also, like, I before I left to go around the world, I had 3 primary goals I wanted to achieve when I got back. One was to make a documentary, which I had no idea how to do that, but we ended up doing that with some help, of course. I wanted to write a book, which it's only taken me 24 years to get it finished, but here we are.
It's done.
The other thing I wanted to be was a corporate speaker. And I read books prior about, because I love I Achieved, I Survived. I read about people that had gravitated to corporate speaking for, whether they be the flavour of the month or whatever. But what I found was that, and I strongly subscribe to this, to live the experience, whatever it is, surviving, achieving, whatever, is one, or swimming, winning a gold medal is one skill. But to take that skill and to transfer it into the written form or the verbal form, such as on stage in front of an audience or in a book, in a way that people find interesting and meaningful and humorous or whatever the hell it is, that's a whole different skill set altogether. And I love that stuff. I love that studious thing. I love learning from other people. I've been on the phone this morning because I'm into kayaking at present. So I've been asking people about roof racks for kayaks and what's the best, and how I started out 2 hours ago is not how I finished up in my thinking. I love it.
And that's another thing. I found I've got a few things I have about people who think big, right? I've got it down to about 5 things they do, but one is they think big. The second thing they do is they're really curious. They're crazy curious, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's you've just just said that. They're really crazy curious. They're also optimistic but grateful for where they are.
Exactly.
And the other thing they do is one thing they do is they have fun. And when the fun stops, they actually change sports, change careers, change direction. And you totally embody that.
When you look at the book and you look at all the different characters that I've had, and I hadn't realised it until I sat down and wrote them out. Wow. All I've really got is a driver's license. And I joke about it, but it's true.
Yeah.
The qualification I have is a driver's license.
There's a lot of consistent themes though in what you do, and they really do they're coming through in this. I can hear it, and I also saw it in the book. Tell me, with the kids now, did the kids go into sailing, or did they go, God, that devil took that away for too long? So tell us about your 2 children.
My daughter is Holly. She'll be nearly 30. She's 34 in January. My son Jordan is 32. Both of those got into sailing. Jordan more so at a younger age.
Yes.
Both of them. Jordan left school at 17. He rang me. I was in Perth speaking at a conference. And I'd been trying to nurse him through the end of year 12, but he just started. He was 2 days into year 12, and he rang me. He said, Dad, I'm done.
Right.
Came back home, and how he left school and he did his offshore yacht masters.
Fantastic.
Before he was 18. Both of them went off and worked in super yachts.
Yeah.
They worked in the Med and the Caribbean and the Pacific doing that. We bought Jordan came to Antarctica with me when he was 12 for the first time. Holly had a 15th birthday standing on an iceberg in Antarctica. Patagonia, Cape Horn, some beautiful things. Jordan started skipping our 60-foot expedition boat, aptly called Commitment. At 20 years of age, he started skipping her, taking clients from around the world, around Cape Horn and Patagonia. And when he was 21 and a half, he skippered it to Antarctica with 7 other people on board without me.
Wow.
Very capable, not because I was pushing him in any way, shape, or form. So they still, right now, they're both having a little bit of a sabbatical. Marriage, partnerships, all that sort of stuff. But both have got an extremely adventurous spirit, for which I'm very grateful.
And so and so that's one of the things you touched on a second ago there. But so after you did come back, you then started doing these expeditions. You did, several trips to Antarctica and a lot of different places. Yeah. How did that come about? How did you come about launching that?
So what happened was that getting close to the end of the around the world trip, as I'm coming across the Great Australian Bight, and the wind was predominantly from the north, so I'm sitting in the cockpit looking to the south, and I'm heading towards Tasmania, and I'm looking at the horizon thinking, I wonder if I'll see those southern lights, whatever the hell they are, because, every bird and every cloud, but I don't. They're all Cape pigeons to me. So I remember thinking, I wonder what's over the horizon for me, in my life. And so I found myself looking towards Antarctica. I ran Matt Syker Island Lighthouse. It's early hours in the morning. It's still dark. Matt Syker's blinking away. And I can still, sitting here now, talking to you now, Rob, I can still remember turning my head and looking over my right shoulder back towards the south, thinking, I wonder what the hell is down there,
Right.
So in 2003, early 2003, I committed to finding out. So I prepared Solo Globe Challenger, and I took it down to Mawson's Hut, south of Tasmania. It was a 7-week expedition. I took 4 other people who all had various skills and abilities that I didn't possess, like a paramedic, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And we went to Mawson's Hut, incredible experience. We came back from that. I stood on the dock at the Royal Yacht Club of Tasmania at Sandy Bay. A young television reporter put a camera in my face and a microphone, and she's gone, Mr. Mowbray, how did Antarctica affect you? And I'm chilled. Like, I'm just 7 weeks. I've just been knocked down at 550 miles south of Tassie. Like, I'm chilled, right? Glad to be alive. I looked at the camera and I said, I want my children to see an iceberg.
Right.
For me, that said it all. So I knew I had to get a bigger boat. So I bought Commitment in Adelaide in 2005 at an auction. She was in her death throes. I refurbed. It took 1.5 years of my life. At $450,000 later, on the 15th of October 2006, we sailed out of Newcastle Harbour across to Wellington, across to Cape Horn, and we were based over there until about 7 years ago doing trips to the Antarctic Peninsula and Patagonia.
Fantastic. Well, amazing adventures. I think that's the second, that's the second book. You're right. You got to do this. I'm pushing you now. And I know if you commit, you'll do it. But that would be unbelievable. I think even talking about that, because I honestly, I'm being honest, Tony, when I finished, I was like, oh man, why is he finishing it now? And it's not, it's a decent sized book as you talked about, but there is so much more that you've got to go and talk about.
Yeah, look,
for sure.
Trips to Patagonia, and twice we sailed back across the Pacific to Easter Island, to Tahiti, and Bay of Islands and Fiji. Like we went. Yeah. One time I pulled into Fiji. Listeners may know the Asawa Islands, which is out to the northwest, and the southernmost island is an island called Waya Island, Waya. And in the southern bay, there's 4 villages on this island, and unwittingly I anchored in the southern bay, went ashore. 50 houses, 200 people. This is in about 2013 or so. I bought the boat back for a bit of work, and I just fell in love.
Right.
Paradise. So Carol and I were involved in that village for about 4 or 5 years, doing other things as well. But, we would take people there on holidays, and we'd make money for them and put money in their bank account. We painted their church, and we put a solar system in their school. And
fantastic.
All sorts of stuff. So all that's a whole adventure on its own. But I think it's a bit like what you said. If you get bored, you go find something else to do.
Yeah, and now, are you between boats now?
Yes. I sold Solo Globe Challenger. I reacquired it after the around the world trip and after Mawson's Hut. And when I bought Commitment, I sold her in 2006 to a fellow from Sydney who ended up in the Mediterranean with it. And he was 7 years in the Med, married a woman, American woman along the way. He sadly died. I bought the boat back, sight unseen. It was in Italy. I then went to Italy and sailed it back home via the Panama Canal. And 3 years ago, I sold her to a guy in Hobart, Michael, who's the new custodian.
Yeah.
It was for the first time in 38 years, pretty much.
Right. So you're between boats.
I am. Well, I'm not going to say between. Let's just say currently I don't have a boat. I've extended myself a lot over the years, and I went to the dark side 6 months ago. God forbid, and bought a caravan. And,
well, at least you're not trying to race it.
No, well, I might. I always say you can race 2 blocks of flats so long as they're the same.
Yeah, exactly. It's right. It's exactly right. So, Tony, tell us, where can people get the book? Where can they find out more about you?
Well, the easiest thing is to go to my website, which is www.tonymowbray, and that's with a W, tonymowbray.com.au. Now, there's a page dedicated on there to being able to buy the book. Or you can go to various e-platforms like Amazon Kindle. There's a Kindle version out for $11.99. And I haven't made this too public knowledge just yet, but I have narrated my own audio book, which has been a great adventure as well. And it's currently, I think, on Spotify and some of the other platforms.
Oh, brilliant. Okay.
A little bit of a hiccup getting it on Amazon Audible. But if it's not there yet, which I don't think it is, but within a week or two it should be. So there's a whole...
All right, brilliant.
But the website, if you're in Australia and are listening, go to the website and give me a call, whatever you like. Doesn't matter. It's all good. I'm just a bloke from Belmont, mate.
Yeah. Are you still speaking, Tony? You still doing corporate speaking?
Yeah. I'm not as proactive as what I used to be. At my peak with my corp, when I had to rebuild my asset base for about 6 or 7 years, that was all I would do. So I was doing about 100 presentations a year.
Wow, that's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. These days I've scarred right back, so I'm just reactive. But I've done probably, like in January, I was in Kuala Lumpur speaking for a group of 350 non-English wasn't their first language. That was interesting. And I did one last Monday night at Port Macquarie. But I'll probably do about 10 or 12 this year, I guess.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And I love that. And I take it very seriously, being able to have the experience, live the experience, and then have realizations and learnings from that experience. And then, like as well, to be able to then stand in front of a group of people and humbly, hopefully I'll say this humbly, to have them be able to leave that room with something that they can work with in their own personal life or their business life, that to me is so gratifying.
Yeah, no, it's definitely exciting. And I think also your ability, you mentioned it earlier, it's one to live to have the experience, but to be able to translate it, which you obviously can do very well.
Yeah, so it's a good life.
Fantastic, Tony. Thanks so much for being on the show. Really enjoyed it. And definitely I'm looking forward to talking again when you have the second book out.
Rob, I absolutely love your enthusiasm for what you do and your zest for life. Good on you.
Good on you. Thanks, Tony.
Have a great day.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the It's All Possible podcast. you can contact me at rob@robhartnett.com or my website, robhartnett.com, or on LinkedIn. Remember to check out the previous seasons and episodes of the podcast and the show notes for more details on this episode's guest. For more inspiration, remember to check out the It's All Possibility playlist on Spotify, which contains a collection of upbeat, positive music I use for inspiration in my live performances. Until next time, live with passion and a perspective of possibility.